let's dive into one of the biggest, most mind-bending paradoxes of the entire Cold War. It's the story of the single most powerful weapon ever built, and the man who created it, who would, believe it or not, go on to win the Nobel Peace Prize. We have to start with the moment that changed absolutely everything. Picture this. It's October 30th, 1961. High above a remote, frozen island in the Arctic, a specially modified Soviet bomber opens its bay doors and lets go of a single, monstrous payload. A Soviet cameraman on another plane tried to capture the moment with these words. But really, how could words ever be enough? He was looking at a fireball that was 8 kilometers wide. And right here, this is the heart of the paradox. The lead physicist, the brains behind this apocalyptic weapon, was a man named Andrei Sakharov. He was a national hero. But just 14 years later, that same man would be awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for his work defending human rights. So, how on earth do you get from point A to point B? To really understand the man, you first have to grapple with the sheer, unbelievable scale of his creation. This wasn't just another bomb. This was an explosion completely unlike anything else in all of human history. The bomb was nicknamed the Tsar Bomba, the king of bombs. And it lived up to the name, with an explosive yield of 50 megatons. That's 50 times million tons of TNT. To try and wrap your head around that number, it's 10 times more powerful than all the conventional explosives used in the entirety of World War II, combined in a single blast. The mushroom cloud that rose from the explosion was just colossal. It soared to a height of 64 kilometers, or about 40 miles. Think about this. It was over 7 times taller than Mount Everest. It literally punched right through the stratosphere, the layer of our atmosphere where jets fly, and kept on going into the mesosphere. And the blast wasn't just some local event. It was so immense that the atmospheric shockwave was detected circling the entire planet, not just once, but 3 separate times. And windows were reportedly shattered in towns almost 900 kilometers away in Norway and Finland. This thing was a complete and total outlier. The Tsar Bomba was over 1,500 times more powerful than the bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki put together. Its force was about a quarter of the Krakatoa eruption, which was one of the most violent geological events in modern history. It was just in a league of its own. So how in the world did the Soviets actually build something this ridiculously powerful? And maybe the better question is, why? Well, the story of how it was built, right in the middle of a super tense Cold War, is almost as shocking as the blast itself. The whole project was just this frantic, insane rush. On July 10th, 1961, the Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev basically said, make it happen. The design team, led by Sakharov, had just 16 weeks, 112 days, to go from a concept to a functional detonating weapon. The pressure was unbelievable. Sakharov apparently even joked that if they failed, they'd be sent to go build railroads. Now, here's a really critical detail. The bomb was originally designed to be twice as powerful, 100 megatons. But Sakharov's team made a key change to reduce the absolutely catastrophic radioactive fallout. They swapped out a uranium component for one made of lead. Yeah, it cut the power in half, but it also meant that 97% of the bomb's energy came from nuclear fusion, which is a much less radioactive process than the fission in normal atomic bombs. So paradoxically, it became the cleanest nuclear weapon ever tested for its size. The design itself was just revolutionary. It used a multi-stage process, kind of like lighting a firecracker to set off a stick of dynamite, which then sets off a mountain of explosives. It amplified the power immensely. The engineering was so advanced and, more importantly, so scalable that the designers themselves wrote in their final report that they had basically unlocked the secret to a device with practically unlimited power. Chilling stuff. So this brings us right back to the man at the center of it all, Andrei Sakharov. To understand how he changed, you have to know who he was before this test. At this point in his life, Sakharov was a true believer. He was a deeply patriotic Soviet physicist, and he saw his work as absolutely essential for his country. He genuinely believed that if the Americans had a monopoly on nuclear weapons, the world would be less safe. For him, a terrifying balance of power was the only way to guarantee peace. And the Soviet state loved him for it. I mean, he was the rock star of Soviet science, the youngest person ever elected to the Soviet Academy of Sciences. He got the Hero of Socialist Labor Award, the highest honor a civilian could get, 3 different times. He was at the absolute top of the Soviet system. But then he witnessed the detonation of the Tsar Bomba. And in that one moment, everything changed. This was the moment the celebrated scientist started to confront the true, horrifying nature of his work. I mean, seriously, what does that do to you? It's a question very few people in history have ever had to face on that kind of scale. To see something that was just an idea in your head become a force that, as one witness said, could kill the Earth. Well, for Khrushchev and the Soviet leadership, the test was a massive success, a home run. It was a terrifying show of their technological power, a huge piece of geopolitical theater for the whole world to see. But for Sakharov, the feeling wasn't triumph. It was horror. The unbelievable destructive power that he had personally helped unleash started to weigh on him in a way he couldn't shake. He just couldn't separate the theoretical physics on the chalkboard from the terrifying reality anymore. He felt this deep personal responsibility for what he'd built. He became obsessed with the dangers of radioactive fallout and the escalating arms race that he now believed would, without a doubt, lead to all-out nuclear war. And this is where the story takes its most incredible, most unexpected turn. The world's most terrifying weapon would actually end up having a strangely peaceful legacy. It's pretty straightforward, really. The bomb was just so big it scared everyone straight, including its own creators. Sakharov used his fame and influence to personally lobby Soviet leaders, arguing that they had to stop testing these things in the atmosphere. That push from the inside, combined with a massive global outcry, was a key reason the Soviet Union finally agreed to sign the big Limited Test Ban Treaty with the US and the UK in 1963. So in the end, the bomb's real impact wasn't military at all. Let's be clear, it was never a practical weapon. It was way too big and heavy to be used effectively. Its real value was as a geopolitical threat, a symbol. But its biggest, longest-lasting legacy, it was a catalyst, a weapon so terrifying that it forced the world's superpowers to finally take the first real steps toward controlling these things. And from that point on, Sakharov's path was set. He started openly criticizing the Soviet regime. He campaigned for human rights, for an end to the arms race. In 1975, he got that Nobel Peace Prize. And the very same state that had once showered him with awards now saw him as an enemy. They wouldn't even let him travel to Oslo to accept his prize, and eventually they sent him into internal exile. So we end up right where we started, with this incredible paradox. The Tsar Bomba was the absolute peak of destructive power, but in its terrifying, blinding light, its own creator saw a completely different path. It's just a stark reminder that sometimes it's only by staring right into the abyss that we find the will to step back from the